Hi folks, this is Shlomo Eitan, Hebrew for All, class number 14. So let's get started straight away with a quick review of material that I gave you at the end of in the last class, class number 13, and in particular that's going to be significant for us for this class. So if you look over here, I have this rule up on the board. And the rule says, if the noun ends in T bar he or tav, it's feminine, otherwise it's masculine. And I explained in that class that it's a little bit of a goofy rule, perhaps to an English speaker or to an American, because we don't normally think as of nouns. Say, there's a word for computer. Is computer masculine or feminine? There's a word for clock. Is that masculine and feminine? Well, in Hebrew, every word is either masculine or feminine. There are some exceptions. They could be both. We'll talk about that in the future classes. And it's determined, the knowledge of whether the word, the noun it's called, is masculine or feminine is determined by how the word ends. And there's the rule right there in front of you. And you should memorize it. If the noun ends in T bar, he, or tav, it's feminine, otherwise it's masculine. And I'll go with no further examples on that subject right now, because I want to share with you now what difference does it make if it's masculine or feminine. And it's going to make a difference in terms of how that word, the noun, interrelates with another word that's called an adjective. Now, don't let the word adjective intimidate you or get you nervous or bring you back some sort of fear that this is becoming a grammar class. It's not about that, folks. What is it about? An adjective is simply a word that describes, and it describes a noun. So, for example, in English we could say, boy, that's a noun. Big boy, the word big, that's the adjective. Okay? So let's talk about adjectives a little bit as they occur in the Hebrew language. So I call this an adjective reference sheet, and I'm going to show you a little bit about the dynamics of how adjectives work on this sheet. Now, for those of you that have done prior classes, I'm sure you immediately recognize that there are four forms over here, which kind of reminisces back to some of the things that we've seen with verbs. So what are the four forms right over here? So if we look at word number one, we have the word gadol. The feminine singular is going to be gedola. The masculine plural is going to be gedolim. And the feminine plural is going to be gedolo. And once again, I call to your attention, for those of you who have seen prior classes, you've seen the idea of motion in the word. In Hebrew, what I mean by that is, in Hebrew, we want to see, as a general rule, the default rule you might call it, of Hebrew would be that the accent should fall at the end of the word. So the words, this adjective, the first adjective we're looking at on the sheet, gadol, it comes out as gadol. The feminine singular, which has added on another letter, the he at the end, right? So because of the lengthening of the word, you'll tell me it's only one letter's worth. Yeah, it's true, but every little bit matters. So gadol, gidola, because the two standing dots under the gimel gets you moving towards the end of the word. Gadol, gidola, gidolim, gidolot. Okay? That's the first adjective that we're learning. You see it has four forms, and its definition is big or large. Now, we're never going to be working on adjectives quite as much as we worked on certain verb patterns, or we will continue to work on certain verb patterns, because they're nowhere near as systematic as the verbs. And I'll show you what I mean. Gadol is going to turn out to be the only adjective on this particular page that had 4 letters in it. Gimel, Dalet, the Vav with the dot on top, and the Lamed. So I'm going to draw a little line over here to show that that's, as it were, a little bit of a group. But now look over here. Katan. So Katan is not exactly like Gadol, and hence, if you've been learning with me up until this point in time, you're not going to be 100% sure about what's exactly the pattern that you're following. But in the most general of senses, Gadol, if you had to take a guess at what this second word in would be, go ahead and give it a swing, even though you've never formally learned it. And the answer would be Ketana. Right? Same basic idea, but a little different because the foundation of the word itself was a teeny bit different. So katan, ketana, and you go ahead and say it all by yourself and pause if you like, before you hear me. Ketanim, also with the standing dots. And I'm not going to write it in, but the next one after that, it's going to be ketanot. And the word happens to mean small. Now, if you look at number 2, Katan, Ketana, Ketanim, Ketanot, and then now you look at number 3, you're going to say, oh wow, 3 letters. It's just like the one directly above it. I'm going to assume the same vowelization, and sure enough, Yashan, Yeshana, Yeshanim, and Yeshanot. And now here's a little bit of the tricky aspect of adjectives, because the next one, even though it has 3 letters, and you might want to be inclined to repeat the pattern that we've seen developing, still in all I can tell you that this is another group within the adjectives, and this one's going to be pronounced Ra'ev with cat's eyes. Ra'ev. The second one in is going to follow the same general form of how it pans itself out, and yes indeed, if you've guessed, and I'd like you to guess, or I'd like you to make an educated guess, it would be Re'eva. Ra'ev, Re'eva, and then the next one will be Re'evim, Re'evot, and indeed, I'm giving you the definition of the word, and it happens to mean hungry. Okay, so number 5, no tricks. It's just like 4, and hence it's part of that same group, and it would be pronounced as Sa-me. There we go. And the next one in would be, go ahead and pause if you like, or say it, Se-me-a. And go ahead and say, what would the plural be even before I get there? You're right, Smeim, and then Smeot, and I'm sure you've caught the idea of how the 2 standing dots help with the motion towards the end. The word means thirsty. The next one is a one-of-a-kinder on this particular sheet. Certainly tricky once again because it has only 3 letters and therefore you're not exactly sure where to put it. But my horizontal lines separating between the groups is my attempt to help you see and become accustomed with some of the major adjectives of the Hebrew language and how they work. Yafeh ends with a hey. So I wonder how many of you could guess, and it would be a guess, how the feminine singular is going to end. Yafeh, go ahead and say your guess out loud. Start to play with the language and enjoy it. It's fun. We love Hebrew. Yafeh, Yafah. The plural, take a guess. Yafim. And then, notice the hay is fallen out. Yafot. And then, once again, a one-of-a-kinder on this particular sheet, one of the most popular words of the Hebrew language, Tov, Tova, Tovim, and Tovot. And notice the hay fell out when it reached into the masculine plural, and the feminine plural will be Tovot. Yafeh meant beautiful, and Tov meant good. And on that good note, we'll finish this concept of the 4 forms of the adjective. just prior to that, in lesson 13, and at the beginning of today's class, we reviewed the gender of the noun. And in the next class, the upcoming class, we'll be able to take a look at how these two words, the noun and the adjective, integrate together in Hebrew. It's been fun learning with you. Looking forward to seeing you in the next class. This was class number 14. Shalom, shalom.